I affirm what it is. I stay on purpose. I know what it is that I would like to see manifested. And then I retreat in peace. And I'm detached from the outcome. And you've got to be willing to detach from the outcome. And you might say to yourself, yes, but what if it doesn't work out? Which is the ego immediately asking that question. Yes, but what if it doesn't work out? You have to be willing to allow it not to work out. Because not having it work out just means it's not on your time schedule. And that means you no longer have patience. You're insisting, you're pulling on the shoots. You want that tomato now. You don't get tomatoes in May in Michigan. You've got to wait till August. And if you don't like it, then send to Peru and you can have them. And so what you do is you let go of your desire to have tomatoes show up in May, and you wait till June or July or August. And if you absolutely have to have tomatoes, you just go to Peru. And they'll bring them to you, or however that works. And you let go. And so you have this knowing, and I have this knowing. And when it's not working, I don't say to myself, okay, this is proof that this program is not authentic, and this is proof that what you're talking about isn't, and so and so. Great things have no fear of time. When you have the knowing, you have infinite patience, you get immediate results. The immediate result is you're free. You're at peace. And that's what the whole thing is about. That's all the higher self wants, is for you to be at peace. You get to be at peace, and you got everything you need in life. Every moment in your life that you're at peace, you're enlightened. So you have a knowing, and now it doesn't show up, and the contract doesn't work out, or they say no instead of yes. But you're at peace. You say, if it's not happening now, I'm still at peace. It'll happen. I know it will. And you go back to the principles. You practice unconditional love. You don't demand. You don't insist. And then you start seeing it show up in a different way. You thought it was supposed to be over here. Got my PhD in 1970. That year, I did a job interview. That was an opening that a friend of mine said, just do this job interview. It's great. It's for the vice president of a community college. And I said, all right. It was like triple what I was making at that time. But what I was doing at that time was I was teaching, and I was doing some great research projects. I was teaching at a university, which I loved, being there in that environment. I had a practice, which was terrific, a counseling practice. But this idea of being the vice president, I was 30 years old, of a college, and having all of the things that go with a vice, it was just too appealing to my ego. And I went in and I did the interview. And there was a long interview process at this particular community college in Michigan. First I had to meet with a group of students. And they all thought it was great, having a guy who's just out of his 20s be the vice president of the school. And I was cool. They liked that. Then I had to be interviewed by the faculty, and the faculty all thought that I was terrific. Then I went to the administration. And the administrators weren't quite sure about whether they wanted some young upstart to be coming in there, and so you had to get 3 out of 3. Well, I got 2 out of 3. I got the faculty and the student vote, but the administration vote wasn't. And it got down to myself and another man whose last name is Cunningham. It was going on for months, and it came down to 2 people. And I didn't get it. And he did. And at the time that happened, I was really kind of surprised. But there was a part of me that was relieved, because I kept thinking, I'm going to have to go to committee meetings. I'm going to have to put on a tie and a suit. And I'm going to have to go in there every day. And even though I was going to be making 3 times as much money, and I was going to have all of this sort of prestige thing over here, what I really wanted to be doing over here was going to have to be put aside in the name of these ego things. And I thought what I wanted was these things that my ego was telling me. But somehow the divine intelligence knew better. And I came in second. And as a result, I went and applied for a job at a university in New York, doing what I loved doing, teaching and having my own practice. And the rest of the story is the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. And so, when you think that it's supposed to be working and it doesn't work, and you say, yes, but it's not working, perhaps there's something else that's working, that's going on, that you may not even have any awareness about. And you have to understand that. That every fall of your life, that everything that is supposed to show up, that you think is supposed to show up and doesn't on this time, but there's perfect timing in the universe, because this divine intelligence is in all things. And it attracts to you exactly what it is supposed to at that time. Even the things that you just don't quite understand or don't seem right. Where there is darkness, light. What is darkness? The absence of purity, the absence of morality, the absence of a higher awareness. And light, whenever it is brought to the presence of darkness, always nullifies the darkness. Light is a faster, higher energy. And whenever you are in a moment of darkness, if you're in your room at night, very often when we're in the dark, we think our most morbid, fearful, shameful, predictable thoughts that things aren't going to work out, that something bad is coming, that I'm afraid that it's going to turn in a way that I don't want it to turn. And you know what to do? Turn on the light. Just turn on the light. Like, get up and turn on a light and watch what happens. That when you bring light to the presence of darkness just in the surroundings, all of a sudden you can see that it's not going to be that way. Suddenly you're saying, or the thoughts that you had in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning when you were so worried and so fearful, and then you get up in the morning and you walk outside and you think, what the hell was I thinking? Why was I so afraid? Why was I predicting a disaster? Why was I thinking that something horrible was coming? Bring light to the presence of darkness. And in bringing light to the presence of darkness, it disappears. It's gone. Where there is sadness, let me bring joy. Here's a story that John Marks Templeton tells in his wonderful book, Worldwide Laws of Life. He said there lived an old man who was the personification of difficulty, irritable, messy, fighting with everyone, unwilling to clean up or help in any manner. No one was able to get along with him. Finally, after many frustrating months of trying to stay with the group, the old man left for Paris. Gurdjieff followed him and tried to convince him to return. But it had been too hard, and the man said no. Finally, Gurdjieff offered the man a very big monthly stipend if he would return to the community. How could the man refuse? When the old man returned, everyone was aghast. Upon hearing that he was being paid while they were being charged a fair sum just to be there, the community was up in arms. Gurdjieff called everyone together for a meeting, and after hearing all of their complaints, he laughed and explained, "This old man is like yeast for bread. Without him here, you would never really learn about anger, irritability, patience, and compassion. That is why you pay me and why I hire him with your money." Isn't that great? So when you have sadness, frustration, all of this kind of stuff, you have to figure out a way to love it. And the way that you love it is by bringing joy to it. You have to love your sadness. You have to love and appreciate that this is something that is taking you to a better and a higher place. It's exactly what I did with about my father, and how it was the turning point in my life. How I had taken something that was sad and frustrating and angry producing and so on, how I had taken that and brought joy to it. And when you bring joy, you're bringing one of the very highest frequencies in the universe. to the presence of that sadness, and sadness cannot live with joy. Do you know you can't laugh and cry at the same time? That you can't literally be sad and experience joy in the same moment. You have to take one or the other. And joy nullifies sadness. It cancels it. It trumps it, if you will. You have to send love inside and make yourself an orange that is filled with love juice. And that's what you send out. And that's what the great spiritual masters taught us. And we don't always do it. I certainly don't always do it. I do it much more than I used to because I'm better than I used to be. But I'm still not there 100% of the time. When I'm not there, I am conscious of it. And that's a start in not being there as frequently. Make every effort to bring love. And what is love? It says it right in the scriptures. God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in me, and I in him.
We're all on a path, you see. We're all on the same path. We're just on different places along the path. We're all part of this perfection of the universe. And you start seeing the people as being there. And you also begin to see that they have to go through that. I heard an interview with somebody who was a musician not too long ago. And he was a classical musician. And the people that were interviewing him were also expert in this whole area. And they were all putting down rock music, and they were putting down some of the harsher forms of music as being uncivilized or more barbaric. And this one fellow who was very enlightened, he said, when I was 17 or 18 years old, I was a rock musician. And I would play that stuff real loud, and it would drive my family crazy and all of these kind of things. He said, then I moved from that into more sort of contemporary kind of music and ballads and things like that. And I had very little to do with the rock music. Now, he said, I compose classical music, and he plays classical music. And he said that each one of the places that I was at along the path, I needed to be at in order to be here. You can't be looking at somebody else who is not playing the kind of music that you like and judging them as wrong or improper or uncivilized. You have to get judgment out of you completely. And when you understand that judgment is a thought, and that when you judge another person, you don't define them. You define yourself with your judgments. That's a definition of you, putting people into these slots and categories. If you see them not so much as where they should be, or where I would like them to be, but as where they are. And where they are is absolutely necessary. So you see them as here in this music analogy, playing this kind of music that is maybe offensive to people who know classical music or whatever. But you don't judge any of that. You say they have to be there. And if they're going to get someplace else along the line, then they have to do that as well. You begin to see that that makes sense for other people. In other words, if you're going to try to understand others in your life, you have to understand them as wherever they are on the path is where they have to be in order to get to the next place along the path. And you don't judge any of it. You accept it. So that seems very sensible for other people. But it also applies to ourselves, you see, so that everything that we are doing that we know isn't working for us, the constant striving, the constant seeking of approval, the depressions that we may be going through, the relationships that we're in which we're allowing other people to control us, the pursuit of stuff in order for us to have it and all of that, you don't judge yourself along where you are now and say, I shouldn't be doing this. Instead, you get to the point where you see yourself as having to go through this in order to get past it, in order to get to a point where it doesn't matter whether you have these things or don't have them. And then the irony is you'll have all that you need. It'll all come to you in the amounts that is sufficient to take care of your needs. There's no room for judgment any place in an awakened person or in a higher consciousness person. And you'll only see it when you believe it. when you really believe that, and you catch yourself, I do it all the time. I will be talking to my wife, and I'll say, well, not to be judgmental, but, and then I proceed to be judgmental about this thing that I don't like, or that person who did something terrible to another human being in the newspaper. Maybe somebody killed somebody, or somebody stole money from somebody, or embezzled, or whatever it is, and I'll read it, and I'll see that I am being judgmental about it, but I sort of know to announce that I'm not really being judgmental. I'm really sort of above being judgmental, and then I proceed to be judgmental. Well, I don't stop myself and say, I shouldn't be being judgmental right now any longer. What I do is I accept that I have to identify that. I still have some judgmental stuff in me, and as long as I am judging other people, I'm not defining them, I'm defining myself. And then the next time I'm less inclined to do that, and the next time I'm less inclined to do that, until eventually you get to the point where you can see people's behavior for what it is. You don't have to like it, you don't have to love it, you don't have to tell yourself that people have a right to hurt other people or anything like that. What you do is you stop judging it and you see them where they are. And then you do the same thing to yourself. You see yourself where you are. And then you realize that everything that you do, you need to do in order to get to the next step, and the next, and the next. And before long, the stuff that you were obsessed about, that you had to have, you have more of it than you ever had before in your life, and it doesn't matter whether you have it or not. But as long as you have to have it, everything that you have to have owns you. That means you don't own yourself, and you're less and less and less consumed with it. And the irony is that you get more and more and more of it. And if you give more of it away, and you treat it all in a non-judgmental, loving way, that whatever you're getting in, you just keep circulating, and you're not attached to any of it. It just keeps moving and moving and moving, and your whole life changes.
And this power of your imagination, what you place into your imagination, is probably the most important quality that you can have. So that no matter what it is that is taking place, like I've often said, I'm 75 years old now, and never in my life have I ever imagined myself to be poor. Even though I grew up, in a series of foster homes and orphanages, had to work for everything that I've ever had in my life. My mother lived on a very, very tight budget. Just actually literally budgeted every dollar. If she was bringing home $120 a week, every single one of those dollars was accounted for. Part of it went into, she had a little box in there with her little envelopes in it. Part of it went to pay the electric bill. Part of it went to pay, the rent, and part of it went for groceries and all of that. And that's basically how we lived. And when we were all, when I got back with my mom when I was 10 years of age, it was just understood. You go out and you get yourself a paper route, and you contribute and you help out. So, but never, ever in my imagination did ever I place anything there that said this, that things aren't going to work out for me, that I'm not going to be able to have them. And as I look back at my life and wrote my sort of memoir, I can see clearly now. I realized that I always had this space inside of me, like this inner place, like a container almost, that was just filled with a belief system that I could create whatever it is that I placed into my imagination, and wouldn't let it be taken away, regardless of what came down the pike at me. And I find that in these 10 years that we've been doing this show, Diane, that so many of the callers are just so focused on all of the things outside of them that are causing their unhappiness, or causing them to not be able to make the money that they would like, or whatever. And they don't have, people just don't have within them this unlimited imagination that Einstein said it's much more important and significant than what you know, whatever knowledge that you have, because knowledge is just based on the limited number of things that we all know collectively and individually as people. But our imagination is open to everything. I mean, our imagination can take us soaring, out into the universe, beyond this planet, beyond this solar system, beyond this galaxy. It's literally unlimited. And I was having a conversation last night with my son about this. We got to talking. It was about midnight, and we were just sitting up, and I was talking to him about how powerful do you think your imagination is, and what you can place in there, and how long are you willing to allow something to stay in your imagination, before you come along with all of the reasons why that was folly, or that isn't going to work out, or that can't happen. To the self-actualized person, they never place anything into their imagination that they do not want to manifest or create. So they're not the kind of people who go around thinking that their luck is going to be bad, or things aren't going to work out, or I'm not going to get a parking place, or I'm going to get a cold, or I'm going to get sick, or whatever. Internally within them, if you have a belief system that you can't get sick, and that you're not going to get a cold, that you're not going to get the flu, and so on, your body literally reacts differently in terms of your immune system and I just feel that if you get your immune system so strong, based upon what you placed into your imagination, if you just build it up by watching what you eat and making sure that you're drinking your juices, and making sure that you're, eating foods that are, they're not loaded with pesticides and so on. And it's like, and you start seeing your imagination as like, Godzilla in there when it comes to any little bacteria or any little virus or anything that's trying to show up and take over and give you a runny nose or give you the flu or give you whatever. You see what I'm saying, Diane, is that the power of your imagination affects how it is that you relate to the world, and what it is that you allow into your world, and what it is that you expel from your world before it even gets there. And as a result of having that into my imagination, the right kinds of events and people and things begin to show up for you. And, and then you just begin to change your lifestyle based upon nothing more than what you've placed into your imagination. So keep that imagination of yours in such a strong place, and forget about how much you know. And instead, remember that if you want to create anything, a different kind of a life, whatever it is that you'd like to create for yourself, make sure that you have an expectation that you're able to do it, rather than an expectation that says, with my luck it won't work out, or I'm not strong enough.
God's one and only voice's silence means that God is that which is indivisible. There is no place that God is not. And you can't divide God up and say that God is on this side or God is on that side. I've often said that God isn't doing anything different now than God was doing an hour ago or 100 years ago. And God isn't doing anything different now than he will be doing 1,000 years from now. God is exclusively here and now, not elsewhere, not in heaven someplace apart from us, but here, now, and indivisible. And the word indivisible is very important, because that which is everywhere and cannot be separated or carved up is something that we have a great deal of difficulty in the world of the physical form experiencing and understanding. Because our world, the world of you listening here, is a world of dichotomies. It's a world of paradoxes. We divide everything up. And dichotomies are just our way of being. We divide everything in the world up. The only reason we know that something called darkness exists is because of light. If there was nothing called light, we wouldn't know anything called darkness. The only reason we have a concept called up is because we have something of its reverse called down. You've never seen a person with a front who doesn't have a back. You've never seen a person with an outside who doesn't have an inside. We divide everything. Everything is in the world of the divisible. In the Bhagavad Gita, it speaks about transcending the dichotomies, figuring out a way to get past the up-down, the male-female, the good-bad, the right-wrong, the old, the new, the alive and the dead. Everything has its dichotomy. You can always find its opposites. In fact, that's how the symbolism of language is created, through having opposites. We don't know about oneness in the physical world. Everything has its counterpart, its dichotomy, except for silence. Silence is the only experience that is the same as God. It is indivisible. You take silence, and we'll have some right now, And now let's just cut that in half. And what do we have? More silence. Let's take what we've cut in half and cut it in half again and again. And endlessly you attempt to divide into a dichotomy, silence, but you can never do it, because silence is indivisible. And silence is God's one and only voice. When you go into silence, you go into the place where you make conscious contact with God, whatever it is that God means to you. You make conscious contact with that omnipotent, omniscient force in the world, that omnipresence of God. And the reason I say that it's not crowded along the extra mile is because the mile that most people are on is a very, very noisy mile. And I encourage young people to become more comfortable with silence. We live in a world of bulldozers and leaf blowers and trucks that make endless amounts of noise and chatter. And constantly, I have a home, a place a retreat that I go to frequently on Maui. And oftentimes I will walk in the morning and they're in a big building project in Maui. And I'll go past one building after another and start to count the noisemakers as all of these machines and all of these people who are trying to make the place look so pristine and so beautiful and so landscaped, instead of just letting it grow, just letting it be. Silence and God are one because you can't divide either one of them. Okay? So that going to silence as frequently as you can and understanding that out of silence, everything is created. The words that you are listening to right now as I speak emerge from silence. That silence is the source. And it's the source that is what we want to make conscious contact with. Like the source of all light is the sun. And the only reason we know about light is because of something called darkness. But when you go to the source can't be divided.
Two quotes. The first from the Upanishads, quote, "Life in the world and life in the spirit are not incompatible," unquote. And from Søren Kierkegaard, the great Danish theologian, quote, "The majority of men live without being thoroughly conscious that they are spiritual beings," unquote. Heaven should not be thought of as a place you'll ultimately arrive at once you leave this earthly existence. Rather, it seems to me that you'd want to experience heaven right here on earth. As the title of this chapter suggests from a poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, earth itself is crammed with heaven. But do you see heaven in your daily life? Do you feel as if you're in a heavenly world? If the answer is no, then you're out of balance. You've probably made your physical world the primary focus of your life, with little or no attention given to the heavenly part of your earthly existence. What this imbalance looks like. When you place the larger part of your life energy on the material world, you're generally in a continual state of worry about your stuff, and you feel like you'll never get ahead in this game of life. Virtually all of your mental energy is focused on what you have or don't have. You assess your worth based on such material issues as what kind of automobile you drive or how fashionably you're dressed. You may even feel inferior because other people have more stuff. This imbalance between the spiritual and material world usually means that indebtedness is a way of life. You place a heavy emphasis on winning, becoming number one, and comparing yourself to others. A preoccupation with the material aspects of life leads to looking at life in a superficial way, where appearance is viewed as more important than substance. What others think is the most important measuring device, and how you stack up to externally imposed standards becomes all important.
All of this anxiety that leads to stress is avoidable if you opt to balance the material-spiritual scale. Just a balance, an even split between these two aspects of yourself, is all you need to achieve. The title of this chapter, Earth's Crammed with Heaven, is meant to signify that it's all right here, right now, not in some other place, in a distant future years from now, or after the death of your physical self. Heaven is right here, now, at this time, when you find your balance point. Equalizing the balance scale. Heaven is a state of mind, not a location. Since spirit is everywhere and in everything, you can begin equalizing your material and spiritual life by making a conscious decision to look for the unfolding of spirit in everything and everyone that you encounter. I personally do this by making an effort to look upon my world as if I were observing it through lenses that filter out the form and all of the material aspects of what I'm seeing, and I can only view the spiritual energy that allows what I'm noticing to exist. Try putting on these imaginary magical lenses and see how different everything appears. The natural world is a pleasant place to begin this experiment. Nature. When you look at a tree without these imaginary form-fitting lenses, you may see branches, blossoms, leaves, and perhaps mangoes or plums. With your enchanting new lenses, the lines that form tree boundaries dissolve, and there's an energy vibrating so fast that it gives a whole new perspective of the tree. You see the spaces between the leaves, and notice the silence of the now defunct acorn or mango pit out of which the first sprout of creation emerged, jump-starting the whole process that eventually became the tree you're looking at. You see the continuation of this life-giving process residing deep within the tree that lets it sleep in the winter and blossom in the spring, or into infinity, or at least for the duration of its life. You realize that new mangoes are producing not only new fruit, but an infinity of mango trees as well. You see this life force in just one tree extending backward and forward in a never-ending stream of creation. Begin looking at all of nature with this new vision. Birds, ants, lakes, mountains, clouds, stars, all of it. Deepen your vision so that you no longer see only form and boundaries. Appreciate the miracle that is your environment. As you do so, you're getting into balance. People. These new lenses allow you to see everyone in a fresh perspective. You're no longer seeing tall and short, dark and light, male and female, old and young, beautiful and homely. Your lenses blur the lines that categorize people by cultural or religious differences, and you don't see others as only their attire or physical appearances or the language they speak. All appearances dissolve through filters in your lenses and your thoughts, so you now see the unfolding of the spiritual energy in every person you encounter. What you notice is pure love vibrating right before your eyes. You see kindness personified. You see and feel the same vulnerabilities in all others that you feel within yourself. You see enormous strands of peaceful, glimmering energy connecting each of us. Your new outlook invites you to playfully imagine that 2 people created you, and 4 people created the 2 people who created you, and 8 people created the 4 people who created the 2 people who created you. As we go back a few more generations to the time of Abraham Lincoln, there are 16,000 people you're related to who had to come together to create you. We can imagine going back to the time of Socrates and puzzle over the apparent math we come up with. Trillions of people were needed to create one of us, but trillions of people haven't even existed, so somehow, in some mathematically puzzling way, we're all related to each other. These are the kinds of fascinating connections that you can begin to observe with your imaginary lenses, transforming your thoughts. You discover that there's no one to judge, no one to hate, and no one to harm, because you see clearly that we're related. In fact, we're all one. From here, you can extend your perspective to include all of life. Events. Where you once viewed the comings and goings of people as pure happenstance in current time shaping the events of your life and the lives of everyone else, your new filtering lenses allow you to see how all of these things are connected energetically. Now you see an infinite network of laser-like energies emanating from the thoughts of everyone, blending the events in everyone's life in energetic perfection. You see people with very fast vibrations of energy matching up perfectly with the energy of the source of creation. You see how they attune with the all-creating, all-knowing source of life, and how events are perfectly attracted in a vibrational match. You also see what appears to be accidents, tragedies, and horrors, and how they, too, are vibrational matches that collide in what you've called mistakes, but are really the result of 2 or more energies meeting in a larger picture that you couldn't previously see. You witness the connection between the expectations of individuals and what they attract into their lives. With these amazing lenses, you note that all events and all accidental encounters are really incredibly compatible vibrational matches rather than randomly occurring situations. With this awareness, you're attaining a level of balance between spirit and form.
Do you know your past? Do you know where it is? It's only where you think. Do you know that every relationship you have, close your eyes, just close your eyes. Just close them. Okay, where's your husband? Where's your wife? Where are your children, your grandchildren? Where's your ex-spouse? They're all in your mind. Open your eyes. Now they're gone. Close your eyes. There they are again. They're just in your mind. You carry your relationships around in your mind. And if your thoughts about your relationships are on what is wrong, what you don't like, what you hate, what they did to you, that will be your experience. And you will materialize or manifest more and more of that pain into your life. If you look at what you love about them and make that the focus of your attention, that will be the nature of your relationship. It's the greatest secret in making any relationship work. It's so simple. Always focus on what you love if you want that to expand in your life. When you look at someone that you're in a relationship with, look at what you love, because what you think about is what expands. I'll be talking about that a little bit later on, about not giving energy to the things you don't want, because what you think about is what expands. And if what you're thinking about what you don't want, then more of what you don't want will just keep showing up. It's the only way it works. So now I'd suggest to everybody in this room and everybody listening that you take an eraser to all of the wounds of your past and you just send them away. And don't make them your calling card anymore. And bring the presence of God to those problems. And the presence of God is nothing more than a higher, faster energy. It's all energy. Everything is energy. As Einstein said, nothing happens until something moves. And spiritual energy is just energy that moves very fast and at very high frequencies. And problematic energy is very slow and very low frequencies. And when high, fast frequencies are put in the face of low, slow energies, they are nullified. They dissipate. They can't survive. There's a song that they sing at a lot of the churches that I speak in. It says, "Surely the presence of God is in this place." It's a great affirmation. Anytime, or the affirmation from A Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. But surely the presence of God is in this place. Every time that I have a conflict with one of my children or with any place, I just bring that line to bear on what I am experiencing right now. I just bring that line to bear. Surely the presence. Because there's no place that God is not. As the little child in India in the 7th century, who was an avatar, who was really God in a human form, and everywhere he would go, people would be healed just by being in his presence, just like St. Francis. He'd be seen in the village, he'd be seen in the valley at the same time. Lights would emanate from his body wherever he would go, and everyone in the village knew that this was a child of God. This was God in their village without the benefit of an ego. This was an egoless being who had shown up in their village, which is what I believe our great spiritual teachers were. Like, there's ways to reach highest levels of consciousness. One of them is to take on an ego and then spend a big hunk of your life seeing if you can shed as much of it as you can. Which has been my path. But there's another one where you just show up and you never take on an ego in the first place. There's only been a handful of those in recorded history. And this little child was one of them. And the elders in the tribe knew that this was God in a human form. And they went up to the little boy and they said to him, trying to bribe him, "I'll give you an orange," they said, "if you can tell me where God is." And the little boy, without hesitating, said, "I'll give you 2 oranges if you can tell me where God isn't. It's one of the very fundamental precepts of this entire program, is that there's only one power in the universe, and that is the power of God. And that whenever we see evil, it's nothing more than love going in the wrong direction, away from its source. And all we have to do is figure out a way to get it to turn around and start returning to its source. Because there's only one power in the universe. And every time we think that we are in something that isn't good, like a problem, like disorder, disharmony, disease, discomfort, what we've done is we've used our mind to create a separation from God. And as long as we are moving away from that source, from that spirit, as long as we're moving opposite of that, those problems continue to manifest. But if we can somehow figure out a way to turn around and move back in that direction, we can eliminate it.
Non-erroneous zone people, which I now call NEZ, N-E-Z, are different from the normals in our world. While they look very much like everyone else, if you observe very closely, you'll note distinct qualities, none of which are racial, socioeconomic, or sexual, which disconnects them from so many other people. They do not fit neatly into any role definition, job descriptions, geographic patterns, educational levels, or financial statistics. There's a different quality about them, but the different part is not discernible by scanning the traditional external factors that typify many efforts at classifying people. They may be rich or poor, male or female, black or white, living anywhere, doing just about anything. And yet they are different in that they have no erroneous zones. How can you tell when you run into a NEZ person? Watch them. Listen to them. This is what you'll discover. First, and most obviously, you see a person who likes virtually everything about life. Yep, this is a liker. A person who is comfortable doing just about anything. And one who wastes no time in complaining or wishing that things were otherwise. They are enthusiastic about life, and they want all that they can get out of it. They like picnics, movies, books, sports, concerts, cities, farms, animals, mountains, and just about anything that you can include in your list. They just plain like. When you are around them, you'll note a startling absence of grumbling, moaning, or even passive sighing. If it rains, they like it. If it's hot, they dig it rather than croak about it. If they're in a traffic jam or at a party or all alone, they simply deal with what is there. No pretending to enjoy, but a sensible acceptance of what is, and an outlandish ability to delight in virtually everything. Ask them what they don't like, and they are hard-pressed to come up with an honest answer. They don't have sense enough to come in out of the rain. Why? Because they see rain as beautiful, thrilling, and something to experience. They like it. Slush doesn't send them into a fury. They observe it, splash around in it, and accept it as a part of what it means to be alive. Do they like cats? Yes. Bears? Yes. Worms? Yep. You'll be hard-pressed to come up with things, events, people, activities, or ideas that they dislike. They live, and while such annoyances as disease germs, droughts, mosquitoes, floods, and the like are not warmly embraced by NEZ people, they never spend any of their present moments complaining about them or wishing that they weren't so. If situations need to be eradicated, then they will very likely work as eradicators, enjoying themselves and living all of their present moments. Try as you might, you'll have a tough time coming up with something they'll dislike doing. Truly, they are likers of life, and they wallow in all of it, getting out of it all that is possible for them. A NEZ person is free from guilt and all of the attendant anxiety that goes with using up your present moments, being immobilized over past events. Certainly they can admit to making mistakes, and they can vow to avoid repeating certain behaviors that are counterproductive in any way. But they do not waste their time wishing that they hadn't done something, or being upset because they dislike something that they had done at an earlier moment in their life. Complete freedom from guilt will be the shocking behavior that you will observe in your NEZ person. No lamenting the past, and no efforts to make others choose their own guilt by asking such inane questions as, why didn't you do it differently? Or aren't you ashamed of yourself? And so on. They seem to recognize that life lived through is just that,
and no amount of feeling bad will alter the past. While they practice this non-guilt on themselves without any effort, because it is natural, they are remarkably free from even helping others to choose guilt for themselves, because they see with a third internal eye that feeling bad in the present moment only reinforces a poor self-image, and that learning from the past is a far superior tact over remonstrating about the past. You'll never see them manipulating others by telling them how bad they've been, nor will you be able to manipulate them with the same tactics. They won't get angry at you. They'll simply ignore it and see you as someone who is a guilt dispenser. Rather than being upset at you, they'll go away, or they'll change the subject. Hence, you won't even recognize that the very strategy that works so beautifully on most people has failed dismally on your Nez friend. Rather than smear themselves and others with guilt, they just unceremoniously pass when it comes along. Similarly, your Nez chap will be a non-worrier. You'll soon note that circumstances that drive many people to frenzy will be mildly internalized by a Nez person. They are not planners and putters away for the future. They refuse to worry when you do, and they keep themselves unmucked up by the accompanying anxiety that goes with worry. You can't drive him or her crazy with worry. They don't know how to do it. Almost as if it is just not a part of their makeup. Not necessarily calm at all moments, but just unwilling to spend any present moments disasterizing about things in the future over which they have no control. They are very present moment oriented, and they have an internal signal that seems to remind them that all worrying must take place now in the present moment, and that it is a foolish way to go about living one's current life. With no present moments ever available for awfulizing, they just never seem to get around to the business of worry that so occupies most lives. Your Nez person is able to live now rather than in the past or the future. They are unthreatened by the unknown, and they seek out experiences that are new, untried, and unfamiliar to them. They love ambiguous things rather than being upset by them. They love the now in virtually all settings, being aware that this is all that they have. They don't plan for a future event and let long periods of inactivity elapse as they await a payoff. The moments between events are just as livable as those taken up by the events themselves, and they have that uncanny ability to get every pleasure out of their daily lives. They are not postponers saving for a rainy day, and while their culture admonishes such behavior, they are unthreatened by reproachment. They gather in their happiness now, and when a future now arrives, they gather in that one as well. Strange, but this Nez individual is always enjoying simply because they see the folly of waiting to enjoy. This is not some special credo that they've adopted. It is the natural way of living, very much like that of any child or all animals. Grabbing heavy doses of present moment fulfillment, while most normals spend their lives waiting for their payoffs and never being able to seize them. These people are strikingly independent people. They are out of the nest. And while they have a strong love and devotion for family, they see independence as far superior to dependence in all relationships.
So, knowing that we have a higher self, or a highest self, really means detaching ourselves from a lot of the things that we have come to believe is who we are. Now, the beliefs that we have, that we've grown up with, that we've practiced all of our daily rituals on, is what I call the tribe thinking, the thinking of the tribe. You see, all of us are members of a tribe. And that tribe might be your immediate family, it might be the ethnic group to which you belong, it might be the people who share the same color of skin that you happen to have. It may be people who have the same philosophical points of view, or political points of view, or religious points of view, or people who are related to you genetically in some way, cousins and aunts and uncles and so on. Anyway, there's this tribe that we sort of are born into, if you will. What I'm talking about here, when you come to know your higher self and to live by it, is leaving the tribe and leaving tribal consciousness. You see, to be an individual, when you go to the tribe and you tell them, I've discovered something that's about manifesting, and I'm going to really practice this, and I'm going to do this, and I know I can do this. Jesus said we can do this. Sai Baba told us we can do this. Muktananda tells us we can do this. I'm going to do this. What I'm saying to you is that if you're going to learn manifesting, and you're going to understand your highest self, you have to somehow figure out a way to let go of this idea that the tribe is going to give me approval, or that I'm going to do it within the parameters that the tribe has dictated. Because what you're doing when you're learning to manifest, or when you're learning anything that is outside of the restricted parameters of the tribe, what you are doing is you are speeding up the evolution of your awareness and your consciousness. You are saying, I am going to evolve at a faster rate. But if you go to the tribe and tell them that, immediately you're going to get put into your place. You see, the mantra of the tribe is, but what will they think? That's the mantra of the tribe. What are they going to think of me? And the minute that you start playing that game of what are they going to think, you have stopped yourself from being able to evolve at a faster rate of speed. You don't go talking about it. I happen to be talking about it because I'm trying to encourage you to do it. But I don't, when I decide that I want to manifest something, when I put my attention on that, that's a very private matter between me and God. The reason that you don't share it is because it takes the energy away from what you are doing and puts it on the attention of the person that you're trying to convince. Immediately you get ego in there. And the minute that you get ego in there, you shut down the energy. You shift. So leaving the tribe and the tribal consciousness is really, what you're saying is, if I'm going to evolve at the speed at which the tribe is evolving, you're saying, I'm going to evolve, but I'm going to do it very, very slowly. And if you want to manifest, if you want to really become a manifester in your life, you don't have enough time in this lifetime. You've got to come back in 19 lifetimes. Right? You don't have enough time for that. So it's almost like getting out of that consciousness. When the question was asked of Dr. Maslow, when I asked him this question personally, what does it mean to be self-actualized? He said there are three things that you have to know and understand. One is you have to learn to become independent of the good opinion of other people. That's like at the top of the list. You have to become independent. Self-actualizers are independent of the good opinion of other people. Secondly, self-actualizers are people who have no attachment to the outcome. They are detached from the fruits of their labors. They know what their life is about, and they get on with that, and they don't get themselves concerned with how it's going to work out. They turn that over to God. They just have this knowing that it will, and that's enough. And the third is that they have no investment in power over other people. No investment in power over other people. So they're not really trying to convince anybody else or to subjugate anybody else or to dominate anyone else with their abilities. And these people who have these divine capacities are usually very, very quiet about it. And they will get disapproval and they will acknowledge it. And it's okay. They just move along. They don't allow that to be the focus of what it is that they're going to do in their lives. I can't tell you how many people, but it's up in the hundreds of thousands, that have written to me over the past quarter of a century and told me their difficulties, their struggles, and how if they would have learned one of these three lessons, or all three of these lessons, to be independent of the good opinion of other people, to be detached from the outcome, and to get rid of your investment in the need to have power over other people, how much peace you would have in your life.